as far as like the whole dichotomy between the two, like I think, every situation kind of calls for a certain amount of both. It's just, I guess the tricky part is trying to figure out what part to utilize for which situation, or when to be more of one than the other.
Hello again, and thanks for watching.
What's up?
Here we go, another phase, Mind, Music, and Spirit. Today we're talking about something pretty interesting that I'm sure we're going to get a lot of different perspectives and opinions and emotions and maybe some logical people that throw us some advice. But we'll see all the things that maybe go down, because we are talking about logic and morality versus emotions and opinions.
This is, I feel like it's the type of thing where everybody knows somebody like this. Actually, every person you know is some sort of mix of these two things. So, it's something that everybody can kind of relate to or has a strong opinion about, I would think. Right?
Yeah, it can get ugly with a lot of people. I've had different opinions about this conversation, and I've had very level-headed conversations. Now, one of the things about emotions versus logic, I personally believe you do have to have a good perspective of all three, and you can't let any one take control. But with that said, I don't think there's any way to be too logical or overly moral.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there is, if somebody else could tell me that, but I would think emotions are usually the ones that can cause the most have the most adverse effects, I guess you would say, on life and the decision making that people make big time off of emotional stuff or very opinionated.
That's a good point. Like, I think maybe, I'm not sure, maybe there is a possible way to be too logical. I'm not sure if there is, but that is a good point that, like, you're more likely, or somebody is more likely to cause a problem by being overly emotional than somebody is likely to cause a problem by being overly rational. Like, overly rational or overly logical is not likely to become a problem.
This. Like, I've never heard anybody say that. Oh, you're being over rational.
Yeah,
or you're being overly logical, or you're being way too moral with your life.
Like, in a relationship, like if you're married and like you're with your wife, and you're being like super logical, because not to make this a sexist thing.
And you're not emotional with
not
your
to
wife,
make it sexist, but like with women, like if you're being super logical,
you can't be devoid of emotion.
Right, you have to kind of like be in tune to the emotional.
You have to be a human being.
Shit, yeah.
Like some people are devoid of emotion, and they're scarred emotionally from certain things that have happened to them. And I've had emotional problems. A lot of people I know have went through things in life that could cause emotional problems, but you always have to put things in perspective, and you have to stay logical and not fly off the handle with emotions. That's a big part of life.
But if you're having like an argument with your wife, how dare you?
I know.
In your own house, on your own podcast. But if you're having an argument with your wife and you're being like super logic, but honey, technically you did say the other day that you would, you're being super logical. She ain't trying to hear that. Like, not that I know, but I mean, I've never been married, but I can imagine that that's a situation where being too logical isn't going to help you out. That's going to kind of like get you into more trouble.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
There is definitely you have to be emotional and stuff with your wife. You can't not be a human being and turn into a robot and just be like, I am logical, I am forever, I know everything, and it's all logic and reason and morals.
But that's one of the only situations I could think of where like
exactly
you can't be too logical. And just about every other situation, I
guess even in certain workplaces, I mean, you could be like where you could be, a manager could be a total dick and not let people have personality and not let them be themselves and stuff like that. I mean, there is which that's why we want you guys to tell us. Like, what is other ways that you can be overly logical? How do you believe that people can be overly logical, you would say, or overly using morals and logic over emotions and opinions? But
I think we're both kind of playing devil's advocate with ourselves right now, because we both kind of agree. Would you say that, like,
I would, if I had to make a choice between something, you have to make your decisions, I believe,
based on
not
reason.
Not solely, mostly based on logic and reason, and not be overly emotional or opinionated about what you believe. Because you know what? If you think about it, people who are racist, let's say, are they logical people? Are they moral people? I mean, they might be.
They might claim
be
that.
good people, but in their mind and how they actually think with a superiority complex or whatever it is that causes their racism.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say that stemmed from? It's probably from emotions.
Some
and
sort
when
of
they
emotion,
talk about it, most people are raised, they get out of control and they can't be reasoned with. And you try to reason with them, they act more ignorant and more belligerent.
They had a bad experience in the past.
Oh, that's bullshit. Most of the time, it's not even that case, and not even the case. But yeah,
but they're reacting off of like they're holding on to some like emotional shit that like just gets them riled up and angry.
Or people who get into spousal abuse, abusive relationships are always stemmed from emotions. People beating each other up or doing whatever, being nasty to each other. People who all these school shootings and people who are doing mass shootings and getting emotional who can't deal with their problems logically with reason or being immoral about the situation instead of turning yourself into a devil to whatever the hell is going through their minds. I have no idea, but it's just, I see that a lot of people are devoid of logic now, it seems, and they're being way too emotional. It's almost like the opposite is turning to where the only thing that matters is their emotion. Like, all that matters is how I feel.
Yeah.
It's like, and do you realize that there's a whole world of people that all have feelings too?
Exactly. And it's not that your emotions and your feelings are illegitimate. It's just that in the presence of all these other people who each have their own wild spectrum of emotions and feelings, you can't uphold yours as if they're like this, they're important. Where logic and reason can be kind of upheld because it's kind of the same for everybody. Logic and reason is the same for everybody. Emotions and opinions aren't. They're different for everybody. So, like, how do you uphold emotions and opinions in the same way? You can't.
And it's the same thing with when people get into different topics, whether it be politics and religion or other topics of life, to where people can't even have a decent debate, to where they'll just literally get emotional. They'll start being completely irrational. Most of the time they turn insulting, and to where they insult how you think.
To insults.
They start turning into name calling, insulting, and then belligerence, to where they won't even there is no reasoning with them at that point because their emotions have taken over the dialogue.
Yeah,
and it's almost impossible because then it just becomes ignorant at that point, to where nobody's going to learn anything. Yeah. Which brings me to a beautiful thing that I read not too long ago by a very famous poet. Rumi is raise your words, not your voice, because it is rain that grows flowers, not thunder.
I love that.
I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good one. Raise your words, not your voice. Raise your words.
And most of the time when people raise their voice is because they're getting emotional, or they're about to go to war or something.
Sure.
Or you're marching, going to play a football game, which, there's a lot of emotion in that. You're ready to kick some ass.
Absolutely.
You're going to go in a boxing match or whatever it is.
But it's also important to have a distinction between the two. Your words and your voice, they're not the same thing.
Exactly. A boxer might be going in the ring all hype, screaming and yelling, but when he gets in that ring, logic will be the determining factor, and his logic and his determination.
Absolutely.
And his intelligence in the fight. But it's a conversation that we could go on and on about, and it's a conversation that I want to have again because I want to hear other people's opinions, and I'm sure people are going to be I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your emotions. I want to hear your logic. I want to hear your morality. What do you believe?
Let us know. I'm sure there's a million different, thoughts and opinions on this subject.
But and if you even think about words that are related to emotions, like let's look that up real quick. How many emotions can we have? How many different emotions are there? And let's see how many negatives there are.
It's probably endless. Yeah,
I should put a list of different emotions, right?
Sure. Different emotions. Okay.
Here's just some.
Fear, anger, sadness.
Yeah, okay.
You're
Fear,
right. Like
anger,
off the bat,
three
it's
negatives
negative,
right off the rip, and then joy. Fourth is disgust. Surprise, which could be good or bad.
Sure, that could be either way.
Anything. Trust, anticipation, anger, friendship, fear. Opposite is courage.
Is friendship
shame.
an emotion?
I guess love.
What is that?
That's
from Book 2 of Aristotle's Rhetoric. That's interesting. I get, that's a whole.
Oh yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, that's a whole school of thought.
Okay, yeah, this isn't even.
But it's still, still interesting. Like group of
suffering, weeping. anxiety, grief, despair. Look how many dark ones there are. Okay, joy, high spirits, love, tender feelings, devotion, reflection, meditation, ill-temperedness, sulkiness, determination, which we've already heard.
Hatred and anger, contempt.
Disdain, contempt, disgust, guilt, pride. Like, oh my God, it's almost all bad things. Like,
you're right.
Emotions, there's a few good ones. It's almost like the emotions are like the internet. There's like a little bit of good, and it's mostly bad.
There's plenty of nice sounding ones, but like it seems overwhelmingly that there's a lot of negative ones. When it comes to emotions, it tends to go negative.
So you're gonna tell me that these things are more important. Now let's see what relates with logic.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be like science, mathematics, what
would be synonyms?
Structure. Yeah, let's see synonyms, I guess. Let's look at, it's going to be like reason, obviously. Philosophy, rationale.
Sanity.
Sanity.
Argumentation.
Sense. Like common sense, argumentation. That's interesting.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I wouldn't have.
Doesn't sound positive either. Coherence, connection, deduction, dialectic. Induction, inference, like linkage, ratiocination. I've never heard that. I don't think.
Me neither.
Relationship. Syllogism.
Syllogism. I've heard it.
Syllogism.
I don't remember what it means. Syllogism? I don't know.
I'm gonna click on that.
Syllogism.
I was right, dude. That's a syllogism. I was fucking right. Can't believe it. Syllogism. Ladies and gentlemen.
Argument, deduction, dialectic, logic, reasoning. Okay, so they're not negative or positive. They're just like structure or
that's the best way to put it.
A lot
reasoning.
A lot of these were like arguments and like, what was this one? Like argumentation,
sound judgment, thesis,
connection, induction. Like the idea of just like more than one person like kind of coming to an understanding, or maybe not an understanding, just like an argument or a debate.
It's the act of inducing, bringing out, or causing.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. That's a good way to.
The act of inducting. But you kind of see. Let's look up morals.
It's two vastly different things,
Ethic, integrity, morality, behavior. It relates to behavior directly. Beliefs, conduct, dogmas, ethics, habits, ideals, manners,
integrity,
policies, scruples.
Yeah.
Antonyms are
morals,
corruption, dishonesty, and morality. So basically the opposite of moral is not good. Disrespectability, immorality, indecency, unethicalness.
So I don't think like morals is necessarily like synonymous with logic and reason.
But I believe if you use logic and morals together, you'll make a lot of good decisions.
Yeah, and it does kind of give you
have some emotions,
a foundation of like a belief structure, or not a belief structure, but like with morals and logic, it gives you this foundation of like of thought, of rational thought. So there's that. With as far as like the whole dichotomy between the two, like emotion versus logic and reason, I think every situation kind of calls for a certain amount of both. It's just, I guess the tricky part is trying to figure out what what part to utilize for which situation, or when to be more of one and then the other. When to be more logic, when to be more...
And who to be it around. Because it will be certain people, you kind of have to... it's almost like walking on... Like you have to almost not be yourself around particular people. Because they can't handle a debate. And they can't handle anybody who
it'll
comes
go nowhere
against them or says anything that is... out of line with how they perceive things, and then they instantly get mad if you say anything that's different than what they believe, and then they start calling you names.
That's why
it always leads to the same thing with certain people.
At work, I kind of avoid political conversations, and they say like you should always avoid religion and politics at work, and I think that's often a good rule to stick by. You could break it every now and then if you want, but like I avoid politics at work because I just know it's not going to lead anywhere good. No one's going to like it's just going to cause like you said, it's going to cause more of a problem than anything. Than it's not going to lead anywhere to where anybody really kind of like learns one thing from the other person. So, there's those certain people, like you said, where you just need to kind of avoid those sort of conversations of logic or emotion because, I don't know, either they're emotionally driven or whatever it is, they're unable to kind of like, to go along with that sort of dialogue. They're unable to go along with that sort of conversation. It'll just cause,
about. We've had, I need to get plugged back in.
Way too many people, and too many people I know that just can cause that type of situation or an argument or awkwardness to where when you're around them, like you said, you kind of can't be yourself. You can't be reasonable around them. You kind of just have to fold your arms and
just be quiet.
Yep, because otherwise you get sucked into their fucking emotional
and then
shit.
They just get on, and then it becomes this big, and it never amounts to any. Like you never come to an agreement of any kind,
nope.
And you don't build anything from the whole entire time that you spent. There's nothing was gained because if you are going to have an argument, and maybe it does get heated for a moment.
Yeah,
you have to be able to come to reasoning. Yeah. Like even if you get a little bit out of line, you have to realize that and bring yourself back down, and then be like, okay, let's understand each other. Because even if you don't agree in the end, you can still have an understanding of one another, and it'd be like, I kind of understand where your perspective, even though I don't agree with you fully.
Yeah.
I'll agree to disagree. People say, "Oh, no, agree to disagree." That's so. I've heard people say, "Oh, that's stupid to agree to disagree." I'm like, "What?
There's a time and place for that.
It's not stupid to agree to disagree."
That's what you say once you realize that, like, okay, this conversation is going nowhere. Like, you're not going to learn anything from me. I'm not going to learn anything from you. It's not because we're both ignorant. It's just because like we're both on two different wavelengths. That's when you say, okay, that's when you pull out the agree to disagree card, because you realize it's a wise card to pull every now and then. You have to, because you realize this is going nowhere, and you could get pulled into their emotions.
It's a crappy aspect of a lot of different relationships that I've had, and unfortunately some of the people that I really respect the most, we kind of have that dynamic. Because I don't know, sir, just certain people in my life are kind of like that, and it almost has become to, like I said, to where you just let them be the way they are, and you don't even bother arguing. Even if they say something ignorant, you don't even bother telling them, because you know what? I've also heard, usually the guy who has the least to say is the smartest guy in the room, and it's a lot of times it's true. So you gotta watch out for the quiet people, the people who don't give a shit what everybody thinks and what everybody says. And the people who, my opinion matters, and I want to cry, I want to tell everybody what I think, and I think this and I think that. And usually it's the person who's the quietest person who doesn't need to tell anybody what they think. They usually are the smartest person in the room, and I found that out so many times.
And friends of mine who, like, we both know, I won't say their name obviously, but like when you're around them and they just like chatterboxes, and they constantly have to have like they just constantly have to like talk louder than everybody else and constantly get their word out there. And I love them to death. I'm not mean to like disparage, and I'm not going to say their name, but like I find that they're not like they're not
being rational.
Yeah, and they're often the least educated in the room. And I hate to like be insulting, but like they're the least educated, but yet they have the most to say. And they're just like talking over everybody and like, no, listen to me. Listen to my opinion. Usually
that is the way it is. And the least experienced. Even not educated. Yeah. They might be very educated, but if you don't have the actual experience, people will talk out of experience, and that's like talking from your opinion basically, or your emotions, or how you feel, but it's not actually true because you're not speaking from what you've actually been through. You're talking that your ass basically.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, even if you're a super rational person, if you're in a conversation with somebody who's getting super emotional, if you let it happen, you'll get pulled into their emotions. The next thing you know, you're being emotional, even though you're normally rational, but you let them trigger you. And now you're getting angry, you're saying things you don't mean, or you're like, you're getting emotional because, like, you got pulled into their emotions, where, like, you have to try to remain rational or whatever it is.
Try to remain calm and not argue.
Yeah.
And usually, if it's somebody close with you, what ends up happening is, and it's always like this with people that are irrational and emotional, they are always the ones that bring up everything every time.
Yeah.
They immediately go to bringing up shit from the past. And it's like, dude, we talked about this 100 times now.
Yeah.
And you still bring it up every single time. And you thought you were over it. You know what I mean?
We've settled this. Yeah.
That emotional. And then here's the other thing is about morality. Is how many, I'm sure you've happened this. I've had so many people, some of the people who are really close to me, and who claim to believe in what they believe in, which is supposedly being a moral person, being you're supposed to be a decent, person, which I'm not saying they're not a decent person and shit, but then you will hear them say things that are way out of line.
Yeah.
Or like the way they judge people, or the things they have to say,
field,
like nasty things they have to say. And you're just like, man, for somebody who believes the thing you believe, say some things like that. And okay, they're just words, and that's a whole nother episode. I'm going to have a whole episode about words and how powerful words really are, and that you should care about the shit that comes out of your mouth. And it should mean something. We shouldn't just talk aimlessly and all the crap that people type online and all the nonsense and comments that we might end up getting and trolls and
bring it on.
Words do mean something. Words are very powerful, very, very powerful.
Absolutely.
And it was one of the things that bothers me about people who act like they're moral, but then they act different. You know what I mean?
And that's because that person, and I don't know who you're talking about specifically, probably many
people. Things they say. Yeah, many people that I've met. Somebody who will claim to be a certain way, but then you'll hear them say something and you're like, okay.
But that's because they don't truly believe that. They may claim to believe that. Whatever lifestyle it is that they talk about, they claim to believe that lifestyle, but do they really exhibit that lifestyle?
No.
Are they really living
exactly.
it?
No. But they'll judge everybody else for not doing it.
Exactly.
That's what's
and I do know
up.
people like that.
They'll judge everybody else for being a certain way, but then they'll have the same flaws. That's kind of based in emotions and opinion, though. I mean, I would say that's kind of a certain, and usually people who are like that, in my experience,
more emotional
are people who
anything.
are very emotional and opinionated.
Yep, it is more emotional than anything, and maybe it's sort of. I hope it doesn't sound like right now we're kind of silently judging a bunch of people. We're being overly logical. We're creating a mess of.
We're being not being emotional enough.
Yeah.
God.
I'm not trying to judge a bunch of people silently judging it. It's okay, dude. It's okay.
I'm not being emotional enough.
Let it out. Let it out.
Being emotional enough. I don't even understand why.
Being too logic, man.
A little more fucking less logical.
Being too logic.
You guys.
Because, dude, you're just creating a mess of logic.
It's crazy with the logic, man.
This is what can happen.
You guys are too logical, man. You guys are being too logical.
Yo, turn it down on the logic a little bit, man. Turn it down. You're being too logical, man. People are
take that out of context. Be like, that's not moral. Now you guys are being immoral, and you're not being emotional enough.
You're
taking it way out of line.
You're being racialist.
Racialists.
Yeah, racialist. It's a new word.
Racism is an important thing. That's going to be we're going to have mad episodes about racism. I want to get all up in there and the racism shit. We're going to get all mad talks. Because that is something that is, but
it's on my mind.
It's crazy. I talk about that. And that is stemmed from emotions, my friend. Racism is stemmed from emotions, 100%. And you got to get over that shit, man. I don't care what you mean. It's hard. You know what? Everybody's just stemmed from different places, but it is mostly emotional, and it's but
however,
logical. There's a lot of ignorance involved.
Hitler, however, no, I'm just joking. You're in trouble when
I did read Mein Kampf.
You're in trouble when you're co-hosting. But however, Hitler did have some interesting things to say. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not entirely true.
Edit that out. Edit that out.
But that's a whole nother topic to get into. And I'll say one thing about racism is it is never going to go away, because the day racism is gone off the face of the earth, so will ignorance.
Yeah.
And ignorance will always be here.
It won't.
And so ignorance is something that will never cease to exist as long as humans are around, it seems. You know what I mean?
And I feel like even if...
And as long as ignorance exists, racism will exist.
And I feel like...
And there ain't no better way to explain it.
That's absolutely right. And I feel like, let's say racism did go away. People will find a million other reasons to hate on each other.
Yep.
Oh, you live on that side of the town. Oh, you dress this way. You look different than me. You'll find different ways to hate on people.
You have nationalism, you have racism, very similar things, you know?
You'll find other reasons to hate on other people. Even if every race was the same race, people will still find reasons because, like you said, ignorance will always
and
exist.
it's funny how it's already been proven that everybody on the earth comes from one bloodline. And
Right.
It's already been proven. We all come from the same place.
Yeah.
And it's still, we'll still
divided. Find reasons to divide.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's a negative outlook, but it's also very rational and logic. And I don't ignore the rational and logistics.
But I want to be like I said, it's all it should be a perfect symmetry, a sacred geometry of all those things. And you know what? I might be missing an element or two. You know what? Tell us what else we're missing. Originally it was stemmed from logic versus emotions. That was the original. But then I said, you know what? Let's add morality and opinions in there because those are very closely related things. To give it a little more depth to the conversation. So sure. I said logic and morality versus emotions and opinions. It's just something I came up with. I thought it was a cool topic. We want to hear what everybody thinks. So.
And I'm sure most of the comments by nature are going to be an opinion. Obviously, because that's what comments are. Comments are opinionated. But I'd like to see
people.
Is good.
Yeah, it can be great. It can be beautiful. Thing. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's supposed to be beautiful.
But I'd like to see some people leave some comments that are a little bit a mix of both. Like some, obviously, it's going to be opinionated. That's what comments are. But like some, it could be emotional. It could be a rational based comment. Logic, or what was the other one? I don't know. Whatever.
Logic,
just like
logic and morality.
Yeah, a moral-based thing, And I'm not a moralist. I think of myself as kind of like.
I mean, I think morality almost goes. You see it in children to where they know what right and wrong is. They don't, children don't have the basic fundamental understanding of certain things.
And could be a whole conversation. Is morality innate?
It is fundamental, because if I would think in tribal times, you walk in somewhere and you take somebody's shit, you're gonna get your head clubbed in. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there was an automatic set of rules. There was respect.
Yeah.
You don't mess with people's wives. You don't steal. Like, these are basic fundamentals that go back. I'm not even talking about like the
Ten
commandments or anything, but it seems like basic fundamentals of life that you grow up with, certain ways you're supposed to be.
People knew that, like, however thousands of years humans existed, if you were to believe Exodus in the Bible, like, am I supposed to believe that for thousands of years people lived and didn't know that, like, murder and theft was wrong until Moses came down with the commandments?
Yeah,
no. Morality is innate. It's in us. You do have psychopaths and sociopaths who
are devoid of that.
And they could just
no empathy whatsoever.
Dismember somebody
and you can see
kill
that
somebody
with children
without,
And that's a huge problem.
You do see it in children. That's scary.
That's super rare. That's a whole another episode we want to talk about mental health. I mean, there's so many things.
It's super rare, luckily, but you do see it in people, and occasionally you see it in children, and it's super scary. But it's rare. Luckily, it's a very rare thing. That sort of sociopathy, whatever the fuck.
Total different subject of what we're doing now.
Sure, we could save that for another chunk, because that I could just go on forever with that one. But
but I think it's an interesting topic, so I guess we could wrap it up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's either wrap it up or we could just go on for like forever, and it's never going to end. So
we're just going to keep going. I mean, I want to come back to this.
We'll come back to it.
I definitely want to come back to this and expand on these thoughts and this whole idea, and maybe be more centered in our conversation next time on certain parts of the conversation. But
there's just so many ways you could go with this.
But this is the beginning.
I think we
we opened up this universe of conversation.
We opened up a lot of little realms of different ways to think about this, and hopefully people will join in.
Hopefully it snowballs, and we planted the seeds, and now let's hopefully grow, and we'll come back to this. Like I said, get some opinions. Tell us whatever you want. Give us a thumbs up, please. Subscribe, guys. If you want to send us messages, tell us about ideas that you want us to talk about, maybe a subject that you want us to dig into.
Sure, help us out. Join in. Let's make this, a
Stephen Baum, Jay Baker, you already know. Check out Tape Leak magazine. I'm sorry I didn't flow the desk up here with the Tape Leak, but you already know Tape Leak. You want to shout out your IG or something?
Yeah, it's Tape Leak magazine on Instagram. Check it out.
So, or tapeleak.net, right?
Tapeleak.net is the website. You could order back issues and subscriptions as well.
See, awesome. He's that's my boy, old time friend, and this is another phase of Mind, Music, and Spirit. Like I said, logic and morality versus emotions.
Yes.
And opinions. And all right, guys, much love. Spread the word. Mind, Music, and Spirit. Peace out.
Peace.
Let's do it. Wrapped it up.
Yeah.
Yo, wrap that shit up,
Rip
B.
that shit up, B.
And there's another one.